morning, everyone. Welcome to Halal in Travel Uzakrota 2020. We are glad to be able to bring you Halal in Travel Uzakrota once again since our first one in 2018, although under slightly different circumstances. My name is Rauda, and I lead strategic projects and partnerships at Crescent Rating and Halal Trip. And I will share a bit on the topic of marketing to Muslim travelers post COVID, which will then be followed by a panel session moderated by Bakar Thurinisha Abu Bakar, who is the founder of Elevated Consultancy and an academic at Murdoch University, together with two panelists, Sumaya Hamdi, who is the managing director of Halal Travel Guide, as well as Noor Hazira, brand communications strategist at Halal Trip. So before we get there, let me share with you a bit more on the Muslim market and the different profiles. We are going to answer three questions that is probably on everyone's mind when they think about this market during this time, especially. So to the first question is, is the Muslim market still a growth market after COVID? Are the key drivers we identified in Halal Travel 2.0 still relevant? And lastly, are the Muslim traveler profiles and behaviors going to dramatically change post-COVID? So we're going to try and address these questions, but before we do that, let's zoom out a little and rewind to better understand the general Muslim travel landscape. So in 2019, we were looking at a completely different picture how the travel and tourism landscape was going to unfold. So we projected in our 2019 Global Muslim Travel Index that by 2020, there will be 160 million Muslim travelers globally. We also projected by 2026 there will be 230 million travelers. But how that this is completely has now changed due to COVID, and there are a lot of uncertainty around these two numbers now. So we know that 160 million did not happen in 2020. Exactly how it was and what the numbers are, we will only know once the market stabilizes and it's a bit more clear and we're able to release the updated numbers for those. But whatever the projections are, the fact is that the Muslim population will continue to grow. Numbers show that by 2030 the Muslim population will reach 2.3 billion, and the median age is 27, with 60% being below 35. So we're talking about a really young population here. And the Muslim consumer market will continue to grow because of the numbers and profiles of the demographics of the Muslim travel market will play a huge role in the growth. Of course, bearing in mind this growth is in the context of course the new normal. So the numbers that we projected, the Muslim travelers in 2020 and 2026 might not be the case now. But the truth is that the Muslim travel market will still be one of the top growth markets in post-COVID times. Even if there might be a decrease, it will still be a high growth market in the new normal. In the initial phase of identifying this market segment, it started sometime back in the late 2000s. So the mid 2010s saw us. So the second phase where destinations and businesses embrace this market and look at how to better cater to their needs. So we identified, this phase from 2009 2014 as the rise of the halal travel market, and also the halal travel 1.0 phase. So as we moved on to the next phase, we identified this to be halal travel 2.0. So this next phase will be enabled by four key drivers. They are, technology, social activism, changing demographics, and the environment. So these are key drivers in evolution and innovation. And we see that key drivers are going to be a lot more relevant, especially during post-COVID, in the post-COVID era. So behaviors will change due to the impact of COVID, but the core behavior of Muslim traveler profiles will not really change. Their preferences might change, but their core behavior when it comes to faith and what they look for in their requirements, when it comes especially to Muslim and halal needs, will to a large extent remain the same. So there might be changes in the travel behavior, taking extra precautions. If anything, their halal consciousness when it comes to cleanliness or hygiene or safety and things like that will increase. So there might be changes to the travel behavior where post COVID would have introduced, but their core behavior when it comes to Muslim lifestyle will not change. So it's important to know that we need to get a deeper understanding, and that it's not a homogeneous market. There are many different profiles and different subsegments within it as well. That's really why the research that we do on the market continue to be relevant. We started off in 2009 examining the rise of the halal travel market, and we have since 2015 released many industry reports examining the general global Muslim travel population in our yearly Global Muslim Travel Index reports. We also released yearly trend reports called the Halal Travel Frontier. And most recently this year we released a travel readiness report, which is aimed to help all travel stakeholders better frame impact of COVID-19 on our industry, and also subsequently help to build scenarios for future travel. So we will touch on this briefly later on. And what the intention of these reports are meant to give a general outlook on the market, the behaviors, the travel expenditures, and the trends of the Muslim travel market. Then in 2017, we started diving even deeper into understanding the different profiles of Muslim travelers, with reports examining digital Muslim travelers, Muslim millennial travelers. We also did a report on understanding Muslim traveler Gen Zs, their behaviors, what they do when they go overseas. And this leads us to our most recent report on Muslim women travelers in 2019. So with each study, we explored their motivations, their behavior, pre-trip, during trip, after trip, in order for destinations, travel stakeholders, businesses to be able to better cater to their needs when they go and travel to these places. So really it's important to kind of like understand the amount of work that we have done on these different profiles, traveler profiles, and how relevant they continue to be post COVID. So I think very briefly going into the different profiles which we have done since 2017. With the Muslim Millennial Travel Report in 2017, we developed what we call the Muslim Millennial Traveler DNA as a snapshot of the key characteristics and profiles of the MMTs. And this can be mapped into this DNA tree, which really captures, the authentic, affordable, and accessible things that they look for when they go overseas. So this remains heavily relevant today. Like we mentioned previously, preferences might change, but really the core behavior when it comes to Muslim-friendly amenities, looking for halal food, will not change significantly. So that's the Muslim millennial traveler profile. Moving on to the digital Muslim traveler. So if the Muslim millennial report, we wanted to understand a significant one subsegment, we want to kind of compare that segment to other generations in terms of the digital use. So we delved deep into the digital Muslim traveler psyche. We wanted to find out if the behavior changes in comparison to other generations. So our findings show that millennials are the major catalyst in driving digital behavior. And this is causing a positive ripple effect with other generations. So, in that sense, we found that other generations, baby boomers, Gen X, as well as Gen Z, are converging into similar behavioral patterns as the millennials, although not exactly in the same way. So we know that the use of digital is especially heightened right now. So digital is at the height of its importance, if anything, right now, and it will continue to be as well post COVID. And in 2019, we moved on to wanting to understand the Muslim women travelers, mostly because we observe the emergence of this trend, and you will see that in the Halal Travel Frontier report, it was recorded as an emerging trend twice, both in the 2018 and 2019 reports. So from there, we notice, that this particular sub-segment of the Muslim travelers are really not backing down, and they are empowered and traveling even more of late. So of course, this was in the context of when we actually did the report in 2019. So back then, it was really this was a trend that we really noticed. Right now, it might not be the case across everyone. And the reality is that Muslim women travelers exist, and Muslim women are traveling. And when with this report, we wanted to better understand the trip motivations, and so we embarked on the report. And with that, we found three key characteristics that are driving the passion for travel in Muslim women. So they, emerging digital trends are opening more doors for Muslim women to explore the world. They are able to connect and energize with like-minded Muslim women travelers around the world. With social media, Muslim women travelers are really using that to share the causes that are important and dear to them, with their natural ability to empathize with others around them. They're able to amplify both the familiar issues as well as raise awareness about new concerns. So really, I think this Muslim woman, the significance of Muslim women travelers, as with millennial travelers and digital Muslim travelers, will remain and continue to be very relevant after COVID, in terms of the core behavior, which will to a large extent do not change. If anything, if their preferences or travel behavior might change, their core behavior when it comes to halal consciousness will not change, will remain the same. And going back to the travel readiness report, which I mentioned earlier and was released very recently, content marketing it's one example of how destinations can approach the next phase of travel with empathy. What this means is it means acknowledging the challenge that travelers face, as well as motivating them, getting them excited to a more optimistic travel future. So one example of content marketing with empathy is the 5 Fs, which will shape travel post COVID. So here, it envisions it to travel to be motivated by associations with family, friends, fulfillment, freedom, and fearlessness. So I think it's important to kind of understand where you are in terms of your marketing, and be able to adapt timely in a way that will appeal to travelers, considering the nuances of the situation at that time. Yeah, so this is an example of what we have in the travel readiness report. What you can also expect is what we call the injectors. The report looks at injectors, or as we call it, in other words, also recommendations based on our ACEs framework, which we use in our GMTI report. And based on that, we have looked at access gap, communication gap, environment gap, services gap. what are the traveler and destination strains based on these gaps, and what could destinations and travel service providers do to overcome these constraints. So it does not have all the answers, to the problems that we have and we are facing today, but it does give a framework for you to identify, the different pain points, and in doing so develop proper recommendations. So this is one set of recommendations, but you can use this methodology to identify more pinpoints and see how you can overcome to first kind of like identify the key gaps and tension themes that you are facing due to COVID-19. So that's about the travel readiness report. We've done numerous reports that offer insights into the Muslim travel market, as well as the different traveler profiles, which I have shared earlier, including the travel readiness report. So you may also download these reports by heading over to crescentrating.com and clicking on the reports and publications tab. All the reports are free for download, so you may go ahead and do so. Thank you so much, and I will now hand it over to Nisha, who will be moderating the panel session with our two speakers.
Assalamu alaikum to everybody, and welcome to the panel discussion today. And the panel is titled as Halal in Travel, Uzakrota 2020. And the title of this panel is going to be Marketing to the Muslim Travelers, Understanding the Traveler Constraints Post-COVID, as well as the Opportunities. So at this moment, what we are noticing is that as more and more countries are now grappling to reduce the spread of the COVID-19, there is a lot of interest, but at the same time, increasing pressure on trying to reopen borders and to revive tourism. At this point in juncture, we are also trying desperately to kickstart our tourism economy and really redeem jobs and livelihoods. So the question is, how can tourism marketeers, how can hoteliers, as well as tour operators, what can they do, and what are the strategies that they could undertake to encourage tourism in many of these destinations that are promoting halal tourism? So how do we bring the halal tourists back into our destination? So my name is Barakatul Nisha, and I'm the founder of World Women Tourism. And with me, I have an esteemed panel of experts. We have Salmaya from Halal Travel Guide. We have Hazira, a millennial from the Halal Trip and Crescent Rating. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today.
And maybe before we kickstart the panel, can we have just about a minute of introduction of where you come from and your interest in bringing the halal tourists back into your destinations or the various destinations? So, Soumya, would you like to start first?
Sure. Thank you very much, Nisha. So, as you kindly introduced, I'm Soumya Nandi. I run Halal Travel Guide in the UK, London. And we write travel guides for Muslim travelers. We also run small group tours, and our emphasis is on high quality experiences. So we have a small number of people, and we do immersive trips to Bosnia, to Uzbekistan, to Cappadocia, Istanbul. And it's about bringing to halal tourism a different way to travel, an opportunity, particularly for like millennials, Gen Z, who want to experience something wholeheartedly and feel at home. And that's what we're trying to do. So you could say we're focusing more on kind of sustainable and regenerative travel, and hopefully we'll be able to talk a bit more about that later.
Okay, thank you so much, Soumya. Hazira, would you like to share a little bit about yourself?
Hello, my name is Hazira. I'm from Singapore, and I'm also from Halal Trip. Halal Trip is an online travel platform catering to the needs of Muslim travelers. We do travel packages as well as blog articles, videos. Now we are venturing into podcasting. So that's something really new that we have recently tried. We're still learning. We are very new into the whole podcast world, but I
Mhm.
think we try to be very consumer centric. We try to understand what Muslim travelers are facing, and just our niyat, or like our intention with Halal Trip, is mainly on helping Muslim travelers travel easy around the world.
So thank you so much, experts. So let's move on. So Hazira, over to you now. Well, we are looking at many of the losses in lives, or livelihoods, and opportunities to us during the COVID-19 period. As it has always been said, every crisis has got opportunities for us, right? It's how we explore these opportunities. So, what do you think are the opportunities that destination marketeers or destination organizations can pursue to develop out of the box products?
My generation.
Correct.
Yes. I think there, like what you said, there are a lot of opportunities during this period to just explore different ways to engage the audience. But I would just like to add on to the point before this, is that I think really now is the right time to really sell your destination as much as possible, because my boss likes to say, like, this is where it will start to make a difference. Like, by the time travel begins, we're all gonna be at the starting line, and we're gonna see which destination is the most imprinted and the most ingrained in the traveler's mind. So if destinations are thinking when is the best time to promote their destination, this is the best time. And do as much as you can, do advertisements, do videos, do blog articles, to just imprint the idea of how great your destination is into the minds of the consumers.
Yes,
uh,
in terms of products,
mm,
while marketing is critical, but you need to have out of the box novel products that you want to introduce at this point, so that the consumers have that in their mind when they are ready to travel. So, what strategies could be undertaken that you're noticing amongst the various destinations that you're dealing with at this point?
in some companies, we are seeing virtual tours. Not even we have museum virtual tours. We also have some experiences that are taken online. For example, meet the chef, or like meet or learn how to cook online. Or even one of it really interesting is to go around Prague on a virtual tour around Prague. Late at night. So it's those kind of experiences that have gone virtual would actually attract digital nomads. I think you don't really have to get out of of your comfort zone to
I think
participate
so.
in these
I think you
activities.
made a really interesting point there, because Singapore had something called the paranormal tourism, where
Mm,
we're actually doing a virtual tour at night based
mhm,
on paranormal experiences. And I think it was immediately taken up the
mhm.
moment it was released. And I loved the idea of Singapore Tourism Board coming up with a 4D tourism experience model that is going to be rolled out. I mean, 4D is something really cutting edge at the moment, and
Mhm.
Singapore Tourism Board has come up with that. I thought that was another brilliant idea of targeting the digital nomads, especially those who are the millennial and the Gen Z. And also to add a little bit, I was also very excited, and Samyam, you may be really keen to hear this, that Singapore, we have got an amazing airport called the Jewel,
Mhm.
and because there are hardly travelers coming through our airports, we have now changed the airport into an accommodation. We are putting tents, and
Yes.
high-end tents where people can actually book staycation in the airport, where they have tents at night,
Mhm.
and it's beautifully done up with the lights and the champagnes, and I mean, yeah, and not halal, but they have well, I think they could put halal champagne in there too, and bring in an exotic experience under the jewel, under the stars, and because it's fully booked. I think the crisis is bringing a lot of opportunities at the moment, where people as well as organizations are beginning to think really out of the box. And it's amazing some of these ideas that have mushroomed around the world. Samia, would you like to also share with us maybe an idea that had happened in your part of the world, or in Bosnia, or anywhere where they are experimenting with new ideas?
Sure. I mean, what we tried to do actually is, so we offered online tours quite early on, and we offered the opportunity for our tour guides in Bosnia to take our guests on a virtual tour. And that you've seen it, it's popped up, like Airbnb has been doing it. You've got the roam from home experience. And then Amazon recently introduced something new, or they're going to introduce, they rolled it out, I think, only in the US, where it's like an online tour, but they've developed their own software whereby the person on the other end doesn't have to show their camera, but they can click on aspects of the screen and take photos of the location. If they click like on a shop in front of them, they can ask the tour guide to go into it, and that's how they communicate. And I think what we're going to see is increased interest in how technology can bring people closer to immersive travel experiences digitally, because that's what people want. I mean, online tour is great for now, but really people want to be able to experience the sights and the smells and the sounds. So there's a lot of room for kind of improvement and development in this, and we're starting to see it bit by bit. And definitely, I think there are synergies with the gaming industry, where tourism and gaming can come together to produce higher quality virtual experiences.
Absolutely. I think this is where I lead to the next question, where we are noticing, even before the COVID, we were talking about travelers seeking meaningful and very authentic experiences, where there was actually a movement towards slow tourism. And in fact, when we did a research with Halal Trip, a Crescent Rating, we also found that the Muslim travelers, especially the women, were actually seeking more authentic experiences, and they were actually moving towards slow forms of tourism, where they really wanted to soak in the experience. And of course, these are high value experiences, not low value experiences, and it also has positive impacts on the environment and the community. And what is interesting is also that there are also countries that are now talking about how can we go towards a high value tourism rather than high volume tourism, because I think the COVID has made people realize that we cannot be in high volume destinations, we cannot be in crowded areas. So how can we move away from crowded places? How can we experience high value form of tourism experience? So there is a focus on value-based tourism at the moment. So would you be able to share a little bit on, do you see that happening amongst your travelers? Number one. Number two, do you see destinations moving towards that? And how, during COVID, can organizations move towards high value form of tourism, destinations especially?
You're absolutely right. I think a lot of destinations we've seen, like Spain, which traditionally gets a lot of tourists, especially British tourists, Italy, France, not so much, but New Zealand, these types of countries where they focused on high volume over the last few decades. They're now talking about, actually, it's quite nice not having so many tourists fill up our beaches all the time. How can we do something so that when travel hopefully becomes possible again in the near future, it doesn't have such an impact on our local community? And the key here is, I think, working in partnership with locals and taking in through consultation, working certainly at the community level, working at the regional level, and working at the national level. And all of this needs to feed in. And I don't think we see that much of it at the moment. And I think perhaps maybe it's something that, like, you see smaller businesses doing, but there needs to be more of a focus and encouragement from, I'd say, national organizations like tourism boards on this type of tourism. So one thing that we found, we did some research where we focused specifically on British Muslims. So we've got a population of about 3 million Muslims in the UK. And we asked them like what kind of experiences they want. And what we found was that 83%, specifically of millennial Muslim travelers, like to connect with the local community. So they like to be able to hear the language. They want to be able to try the local food and have that authentic experience, right?
Yes.
And it's being able to offer these experiences because traditionally, traveling as a Muslim, it has more barriers to it. And certainly one of the barriers is food and is interacting with the local community. And it's feeling that you have those options available to you, whether it's through a travel guide online or whether it's through a small group tour like what we do, where we basically take a group of like maximum 15 people, we take them to Bosnia, and we'll give them an experience where the mother of our tour guide will cook authentic Bosnian food for them. And even though she doesn't speak English and they don't speak Bosnian, they connect on a deeper level. And I think the key of making connections like this is that you build a very loyal travel audience. You build a loyal consumer who, when they go back home, they're going to recommend this experience to their friends, to their family. And it's possibly the best way to market your product, right? Because what you're building is something a lot deeper than just a vacation. It's a love for a destination that also brings with it care, because if you have tourists coming that are invested in the destination, they will take more care about how sustainable their travel is. They will take more interest in their impact and their tread on the local environment, and that's how hopefully we can start to build tourism that is more sustainable with interest not just from stakeholders but also from the consumer perspective.
Yes. And you're absolutely right. I think there's a lot of research being done currently on how we could bring the local community back into the equation again. For a long time, we have neglected the local community. So it has always been a relationship between the destination marketeers and the traveler, and the local community have been forgotten in the equation. And that's why there has been problems with over-tourism and protests, and there's never been a really good involvement of the local community. And the social dimension of tourism has been impacted for a long time. I think now many researchers saying get back to the local community, ask what they want, get them involved as much as you can, get your tour guides who are really authentically from the local communities.
Yeah.
And how amazing can that be if we can really reinvent our tourism model after the situation, isn't it?
The locals have a lot to offer. I mean, they're the experts, right? They're just like you guys know where the best coffee place is. It's probably not something that's on TripAdvisor, or where to get the best local authentic food. The locals have a lot to offer, and they have a lot of value that they can bring. And we certainly believe that Halal Travel Guide, which is why we only work with local guides. We work with them so that they can bring the beauty of their destination, but also the love, because it's the locals that have that love for their destination. And once you see it and you feel it with them, it's like you're at home, you've been welcomed into a new family. And it's really something really special and quite powerful.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, Hazira, over to you. You are a lot into social media marketing. And as a millennial or Gen Z, I think they gravitate towards social media to learn about the destination. Peer-to-peer sharing is very much grounded on social media. So can you share with us how can content developers of destination use social media in a way that can convey respect of the environment and the community? And how could they create a renewed sense of mindfulness in our travelers, curiosity, and also appreciation? I mean, this is in line with what we were talking about earlier, creating authentic experiences. What's the role of social media, and how can that be utilized?
They are more aware on what is real and what is fake. So I think the best way to show the authenticity of a destination is by bringing together the locals. Like what Sumaya has said, I think it's very important that we include the locals into destination marketing, into promoting their destination. I think one of the very good examples that I've been seeing nowadays is Australia. Tourism Australia has been doing a really good job at uniting the locals into a video. Like, come to Australia, we'll show you what it's like. So they had the local farmer, or like they had one of the indigenous groups to promote Australia. And I think that was a really good move, by showing the diversity of the destination itself.
So, Samia, can you also share, because yours is also a digital medium, do you provide content on mindfulness, responsible behavior among the Muslim travelers? Because the reason why this has become really critical is that we've also found that many of the values that we are talking about under the Sustainable Development Goals is in line with the Islamic principles as well, you know? And we have an innate responsibility in us to take care of the environment and the humanity, actually. So do you convey that sense of responsibility and mindfulness in your social media content?
Well, that's a tough question to ask. I mean, I hope so. It's like Hazira said, it's getting that balance is very tricky, and engaging with the locals is the most important way. But I think you touched on something which is really relevant, which is sustainable development, the development goals. These are in line with our faith, with our principles. And I would say actually that we haven't actually seen much interest from halal travel stakeholders in adopting this sustainable approach. A lot of it seems to be kind of focusing on meeting the needs of Muslims, which is really important. So like providing halal food, providing hijab-friendly villas and this type of thing. And those things are really important and very valuable services to provide people. But we're now in a new phase of halal tourism where it's not enough now to provide the basics. They have become the basics, right? And people are looking for more and added value, especially the younger generation. And I think we're going to start to see a shift where we see an increasing interest from the business perspective of touting sustainability and responsibility. This is something that we've done from the get-go. We haven't necessarily shared it as a brand message, but from the outset, we've always committed to only work with locals and to do on-the-ground research before we sell trips, for example, or before we share a story, so that we've consulted with locals and so that we're sharing information responsibly in a nuanced way. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is to engage with the locals on this, because it's so easy to share a story and just share it through your own lens without realizing that perhaps you've messaged something that is damaging to a local community. So going forward, I think we're not going to see businesses go back to business as usual. Many of them will not make it out of the pandemic. We know that tourism contributes usually about 10% of global GDP, but there have been huge losses in terms of jobs, in terms of income. So there is a heightened awareness of the impact of tourism, but also the value that it can have on the environment, on people, if we travel responsibly. And I think perhaps we might see that interest from the younger generation in sustainable tourism is going to push companies and push them perhaps to share this narrative a bit more and place a bit more emphasis on it. But I think we're still in the early stages. We're not seeing that yet in the Muslim market. I think perhaps in the next couple of years, we're going to see more of that. And it's really important, I think, to focus on this, because we have the opportunity in the halal travel market to really pave the way for providing a framework through which we can travel responsibly and travel in consultation with locals and benefiting local communities, doing so in a way where we connect with each other, so that we're connecting not just the Ummah, but the world at large in a way that benefits people and minimizes harm on the environment. And, like you said, it's ingrained in our values. And this is a chance where we can really stand out and provide a framework for the rest of the tourism industry to follow.
Right. I think what makes me a little uncomfortable at this point, as I am looking at the desperate attempts of many of the tourism accommodation, even airport and airlines, in trying to revive their business, is to quickly rush into filling up their seats or filling up the hotel rooms. That, to me, if it carries on this way, again, we may go back to business as normal, business as usual, as what we used to be. So one of the things that kind of disturbed me, and I would like to hear your opinion on this, is that some of the airlines actually did a trip to nowhere. Cruises to nowhere, and we already know that airlines are guilty of carbon emission, and now you're doing a trip to nowhere and you're filling up the seats. It's just going to increase the amount of carbon emission in the world, and I think that is against the thread of sustainability that we are thinking about at the moment. So what would you say to organizations to be alerted to these sort of attempts to quickly rush into reviving tourism and going back to business as usual?
I think you're right in that you've highlighted something that the bigger organizations are doing. And I think in some ways it's because they're so desperate and they have so much to lose. Airlines have never really experienced this type of crisis at the same time before. It's unheard of, and I think they're trying to be as creative as possible to keep things afloat. There's always going to be a market for this type of high-end luxury experience, but I think the mood is shifting. People have got used to a slower paced life where it's not just about bucket list. I need to visit 30 countries before I'm 30. 50 countries and counting, because that's what a lot of it was before, especially as it became easier with more flights, more connections to go from destination to destination. A lot of it was about, I've been here, but what have you actually experienced in that destination? What did you actually learn? Did you learn any of the local language? None of that really existed. So it's a shift in mindset, and it takes a long time for this to happen. And we may well see that, let's say, come June, July, if it's possible for people to safely travel again, there's probably going to be a big surge in people taking flights, in people taking trips. But once that has been, we've moved past that, I think we are going to start to see a mindset shift.
Right. Yeah. So not that people are not watching these kind of initiatives, so Singapore Airline faced a backlash, and environmental groups, and certainly people like Hazira and her generation are watching these sort of initiatives by organizations, and reflecting. And I would like to hear your opinion. What do you think of organizations which are going to these unsustainable forms of tourism? What is that psyche? What is going on in your minds that might impact when tourism revives?
First of all, I think one of the things that I realized is that these flight to nowhere, they're not exactly cheap. So one seat could easily cost 2,000. So that is definitely out of our budget, first of all, basically out of my budget. I think it's also very important to be careful at this point of time. Everyone is looking at you. Everyone is on social media. Everyone has the right to say something.
So one of my contacts in Singapore, he's very much into social and environmental sustainability. He took the opportunity of a period like this, and he's organizing kayaking to around Singapore, and they are getting youngsters to come together to clean the sea, clean the beaches, and well, it's a trip out of Singapore, but they're also using this opportunity to not just do a careless, mindless trip, but it's a very mindful trip to go into the waters, to clean up, and learn about the history of Singapore alongside, all these cleaning efforts. So I thought it's a great way of now redefining travel experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that now is the time that we are getting our own locals to be ambassadors in the future by letting them rediscover our own countries. Samia, if you know of any other countries that are doing that to get domestic tourism happening, but in a way that you get locals to rediscover their destination to be future brand ambassadors.
Yeah, I mean, I know in Jordan they've introduced something similar to what you guys have in Singapore, where you buy a ticket and you can visit various sites. Here in the UK, and I think in a lot of other places, it's a bit more difficult because the geographic expanse means you don't really want people traveling from region to region. And there's been, certainly here in the UK, it's been very tricky to manage that. So people are encouraged to visit their local destination a bit more. And you're seeing a lot more branding. So I know that Visit Scotland Tourism Board are doing a lot more branding about exploring wild Scotland, taking cycling trips, going on hikes and this kind of thing. At the moment, people are being told to stay at home and to not travel far outside of their vicinity. So there is renewed interest in it. And actually, we did a poll over the weekend to ask our audience if they're likely to take a road trip once lockdown ends. So it's due to end on the 2nd of December. And it was 50-50. Some people said they will, and other people said they're not sure. So it's still tentative. But I think even after, when things start to ease up again, we will see renewed interest in people exploring the local areas and building that love and connection with their local areas.
Yes. What would be curious for me is one part of the story is this, how do we get domestic tourism happening? I suspect many countries are doing it as a desperate attempt to kickstart their economy, but the smarter ones are looking at how do you get domestic tourism happening so that your locals become your future brand ambassadors. But I think the smartest of the pack would be those countries that think of after this, how do you really use your domestic travelers or your locals to market it strategically as brand ambassadors. The next part is that after they have experience, how are you going to have a really, really smart promotional campaign that is going to draw on the locals who have experienced these and market to the international travelers? I've seen the promotion of, Rotorua in New Zealand, for example, a long time back, where they used the locals to try to invite international tourists to come into their country. And there was a fantastic promotional campaign done at that time. Singapore did a little bit to get us to invite our foreign friends and relatives into our country, and then it stopped. So it would be really interesting to see how destinations are going into appropriate campaigns to get the locals to market to international visiting friends and relatives. We call it the VFR market, and bring them to your country after. These are the people who are going to arrive on your shores before the leisure travelers of random leisure travelers. The VFR market, I suspect, will be the first to enter our shores. And let's see how the smartest of the destinations are going to do that. So my very last question to you as a roundup is for each one of you to tell me, what is your prediction or counterintuitive about the trends for halal tourism post-COVID? And that will become a topic next year too, but what do you think? So, Soumya, would you like to start first?
Sure. I think we're going to see an increased interest in experiential travel and in service providers that can offer that in like group trip type experiences where you can connect with the locals and you can connect with each other. There's not much of that at the moment. I think we've focused, like I said, on the basics and on building packages for people, but it's building that connection. And especially for millennials, Gen Z, where they can find that service, they will go for it. So more companies are becoming aware of that. And I hope, inshallah, it will become a service that's more widely available to people because it has so much to offer, not just to the traveler, but also to the locals and to the local community.
Thank you, Soumya. How about Hazira? What do you think?
I think you are right, Sumaya. I think a lot of people will be more interested in focusing on the experience more than you've been to here. People will be more on participating in local experiences and meeting the locals. But I do think there is going to be an increase in wellness and retreat kind of trips. So like you spend 5 days in a remote island to just like do yoga or like to just refresh your mind. And another one that I think is going to start to increase is traveling with a purpose. So it's like traveling to Cambodia and meet the orphanage, and just to cleanse your mind. I think that is something that will be on the rise, especially post-COVID.
All right. Thank you very much to the panelists. It's been really exciting for me listening to your insights and having this conversation with you. Inshallah, I think tourism will pick up in really soon. And hopefully 2021 is going to see a better, more responsible and mindful tourism among at least halal travelers. Right?
Inshallah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.